Welcome to the Little Faith Podcast. If you're a person with a little faith like me, well, birds of a feather flock together. Welcome to the show. Today, I want to talk about revenge or the lack of it. Today I want to open up about share about some incidents that I barely talk about, even with my friends. I'm not going to elaborate in detail because I'm not doing this episode to retaliate or something. I'm just trying to bring it up because it kind of shows my life philosophy in a way. And it also shows where it derives from. So with no further ado, let's hop into the story. Now, a couple years back, I was working at a multinational corporation. It was a good job, good pay, good colleagues. I had some good supervisors. I was fresh out of college, kind of wet behind the ears, still a newbie, but I learned a lot from my time there. And I learned a lot from my many mistakes. And there was this one mistake in particular that I learned a huge lesson from. So there was this one time I was on vacation and I was at the airport, literally at the boarding gate, and you could hear the boarding call announce, flight number, blah, blah, blah. Now it is time to board at gate number, blah, blah, blah. So just while I'm about to board the plane, I get a phone call. And this is a very important phone call from a very important client. So I don't want to hang up on her. I pick up the phone and I have just a little time to talk to her. And over the phone, she makes certain demands about some business deals with some new business terms. And deep down, I know that's impossible because those terms would get me in deep trouble. So I said, no, I can't agree to that. It's impossible. So we go back and forth over the phone. And eventually the client says, well, you know what? Your supervisor agreed to the deal. If you don't believe me, ask him yourself. And I'm like, I don't want to offend my client, but I don't want to, say to her face that you're a liar or call her bluff. So I'm like, okay, I'll call my boss and I'll get back to you. So I hang up. And once again, I hear the boarding announcement again. Passengers of flight number, blah, 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 please proceed to gate number, blah, blah, blah. So now I'm in a very urgent situation here. I call my boss and I'm like, hey, boss, I'm sorry. I'm at the airport right now, but I need to verify something really quick. Did you promise our client blah, blah, blah? And my boss literally calls me an idiot. He says, are you an idiot? What on earth are you thinking? What on earth makes you think that I'd agree to that? And he hangs up on me. So I call the client back. I tell her, my boss did not agree to those terms. But on the other end of the phone, she still insists that my boss agreed to those specific terms. And she adds on a threat. She says, if you don't agree to it, if you do not sign it, which your boss had promised us, I'm going to pull down all your products from our shelves. So what am I supposed to do? I call back my boss and I get yelled at again. And for the next 5 minutes, I'm going back and forth between my client and my boss, just trying to figure this out. And I remember on the last call, my boss goes like, all right, you know what? Sign it. Let's just sign it. We'll deal with it when you get back. And that's what I did. And that was the beginning of a huge catastrophe. So a week later, I'm back from vacation. I'm back in the office. I go to my boss and he denies everything as if he had amnesia or something. And me, I have no email. I have no phone records. So it's my words against his. And for the next couple of weeks, I'm in deep water. I'm in deep trouble here. I am bombarded with review meetings one after another. And my boss and my boss's boss, they literally threw me under the bus. And it was quite a big bus. I'm saying it with a smile on my face right now, but deep down, I'm feeling like, I really don't want to go through this again. But also, I'm not saying that I'm 100% blameless, right? After all, at the end of the day, it was me that gave the green light. But that was on the premise of believing that my superior had made a promise to the client and that he had things sorted out. But at the end of the day, my supervisor and my supervisor's supervisor, both of them denied they had anything to do with it, and they pinned it all on me. And I knew they were complicit. I knew they were in it together because there was this one time I saw them, they saw me on the phone after one of those review meetings, and they were anxious. You could tell by the look on their face, they were anxious. And they were asking me who I was calling. I actually called my pastor. And when they found out I called my pastor instead of somebody else, you should have seen the look on their face. It showed total relief. They were relieved that I was calling my pastor. I knew they betrayed me. Ironically, that was my rite of passage. That specific incident taught me more than anything else during my time there. And sadly, it taught me that sometimes you just can't trust everybody, no matter how trustworthy they look. And when you're doing business, even when it's between you and your boss, always keep email records. I feel sad. I feel unhappy, even when I'm describing it right now. And I have nightmares about it. I'm not exaggerating. There are only two things that I have nightmares about. One is going back to the military, where I served as a military officer in an armored brigade. And then there's this incident where I dream of going back to work at that specific company, having to relive all the bad moments. I have nightmares about it. That's how bad it is. But, despite having this grudge, I'm not going to deny that. I have this grudge even after so many years. But I think I can say with a very clear conscience that I have never harbored the thought of getting even. I've never thought of retaliating, not for once. And I think that thought comes from a very deeply rooted belief that everything is in God's hands. This is part of my life philosophy, that I'm not going to take justice into my own hands because God is going to take care of everything. The philosophy is deeply rooted in Christianity. You probably know the idiom, turn the other cheek, right? People killing, people dying, children hurt and you hear them crying. Can you practice what you preach? Can you turn the other cheek? Father, 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 help us. And some more. Black Eyed Peas, I love their song. Turn the other cheek. Where does it come from? It comes from the Bible. Jesus said, don't do an eye for an eye. Instead, if someone slaps you on one cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. So that's where it comes from. And Jesus goes on to say, you have to love your enemies. You have to love your enemies so that you can be perfect like God. And I'm not going to say that I'm this noble person, that I've already forgiven them. I know deep down that I haven't. I still hold this grudge against them. But at least, to the very least, I've chosen to at least try to forget, and try to let things slide. Why? Because I believe that God knows all things and that God is in total control. And thus, I don't need to seek my own revenge. So that's one incident. Then there was another. Many years later, this is a total different occasion. I was pulled into and kind of caught in the middle of a harsh situation. And I'm not going to elaborate further, but to put it simply, I was backstabbed. I was backstabbed by a mob of people, to say the least, unfriendly people who did something vile. That's what I'll say, vile. And I took a hit. I took a huge hit, and it made me see the darker side of the moon. And I think I became disillusioned about humanity, because I've always used to think that, people are good. People are nice in nature. But that experience made me see that, sometimes it's just not true, or maybe it's just half true. Because while people can be sometimes angelically kind and magnificent and noble, but there are other times that people can be extremely ugly as well. And sadly, I got to see a part of that. And during that time, a lot of the times I was anxious. I feel saddened by this harsh realization of reality. People can be very, very bad. So in the midst of all this, one week I was traveling with my family and we reached this hotel. I was so exhausted. I was exhausted physically and mentally, tired of the entire situation. I thought that I needed to catch my breath. So I knew that they have Bibles in the hotel rooms. So I opened the bedside table drawer, knowing there should be a Bible there. And sure enough, I found a New Testament. And usually I'm not the superstitious type, but in that very moment, I needed to hear God say something to me. I needed to hear God. So I thought to myself, you know what? I'm just going to randomly open the Bible, and whatever passage, the first passage that shows up, that's what God has to say to me. Hopefully, it's not something about God's judgment. So I was keeping my fingers crossed, and I flipped through the Bible. And the first passage it landed on was Luke chapter 18. And it had a title. The title was The Parable of the Persistent Widow. And this is what it was about. So that was the backdrop was a time when Jesus foretold his death to his disciples. He also mentioned the persecution that they would be facing after his own death because of the unjust of this secular world. But he told his disciples to not lose faith, and no matter what, to always keep praying. Hold on to your faith, keep praying. That was the message. And the parable goes like this. There was a small town, and in this town there was a judge who was not respectful, nor did he fear God. And in this town there was also a widow. This widow came to the judge every single day to plead for justice against her adversary. Now the judge was very lazy. He was a lazy person. He didn't fear God. He didn't care what people thought of him. He didn't care what people think. But this widow just kept on showing up day after day after day, pleading for justice. And eventually the judge said to himself, you know what? I'm just going to settle her case so that she quits bothering me for the sake of my me time. So Jesus says, listen to what the unjust judge says. And will not God bring about justice for his chosen ones who cry out to him day and night? Will he keep putting them off? I tell you, he will see that they get justice and quickly. However, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on earth? That was Jesus' message. And upon reading that, I instantly had this huge relief in my heart, as if a stone had fallen off my chest, because I knew that God was listening. God showed me through the Bible. I knew that God had been listening to me and watching over me all along, and that made me want to cry. So within my most desperate hours, when I feel like that all hope is withering, I heard God say to me, just keep praying. I've been here all along. Justice will come quickly. Be a man of integrity and righteousness and keep doing what you've been doing. And with that kind of promise, that kind of wipes out any impulse to retaliate, doesn't it? It makes you not to think of avenging yourself, knowing that God is in control, knowing that God knows everything and God will take care of the situation. So in the book of Romans, Paul actually quoted the Old Testament. He said, do not take revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath. For it is written, it is mine to avenge, I will repay, says the Lord. And if you think of it, if we choose to avenge ourselves, wouldn't we ourselves become sinners by wrongdoing others? We can look into the Bible. Around 1,000 years before Christ, there was a young shepherd. His name was David. A lot of you probably know David. In the end, he became king of Israel. Now, young David, he had numerous chances to kill his adversary, his persecutor, King Saul. And time again, though, he let him go because David had a righteous heart. And that is why God chose him over Saul. However, Saul kept going after David. He tried to hunt him down time and time again. But in the end, Saul got wounded in a battle against the Philistines and he killed himself. And after that, David ascended the throne and became king of Israel. Now, you could imagine if David chose to avenge himself, if David chose to hurt Saul or to kill Saul, the story would have turned out pretty differently, right? So once again, that shows us that don't take revenge into your own hands, but leave it to God. So I think there's a few takeaways for today. First of all, we should always leave revenge to God and know that God has his own timing and his timing is always right. It might not seem right to us, but God always works in the right time, in the right place, and we should trust in God. Second, God brings justice in ways that are, sometimes hard for us to comprehend. But even so, don't lose faith. Don't misunderstand God. We should know that there are, even in some incidences, sometimes justice only comes in the life after death. Remember, Jesus once said, do not be afraid of those who kill the body but cannot kill the soul. Rather, be afraid of the one who can destroy both soul and body in hell. So spiritual judgment is way more severe than on the body. And that is probably why we should always be forgiving of our enemies. We should love our enemies. We should pray for our enemies. I once heard a pastor say that we have no enemies. Wow, that's probably the highest level you can get in spirituality, having no enemies. But learning to forgive, learning to love your enemies, that is something I'm still learning myself. And I think I have a long way to go, as I just mentioned. Deep down, I still haven't completely forgiven the people who did me wrong. I still have a lot of learning to do, and I'm still learning to forgive. All right, the third point, I think, is to remember we should not avenge ourselves. We should entrust our situations to God, and God will see to it that what is just is done. So have faith in God. And last, we shouldn't linger on thoughts of seeking or waiting for God's revenge. We should always present our case to God and just leave it to God. Pray to God and let God have the final decision. Don't try to interfere with the situation. Like, imagine you're on your way to a banquet. You're all dressed up in tidy suit, and on the way, there's this dog that keeps barking at you. Would you stop to argue with a barking dog? Probably not. Leave it. You wouldn't want to get into a fight with a dog and get your suit all dirty. Just focus on where you have to be. So in the same sense, whatever situation you're going through, entrust yourself to God, leave it, and focus on your own journey. Stick to your own path and what God has in store for you. So last, I would like to end with a story. Now, back in college, I loved to read. I still love to read. And in college, I came across this book about an ace fighter pilot in the Luftwaffe in World War II. The Luftwaffe is the German Air Force, by the way. His name was Erich Hartmann, German. And in 1,400 combat missions, he shot down 352 fighter planes, which is the highest number recorded in air combat history. It was a very interesting book. Usually we see World War II through the lenses of the Allies. So rarely do you get to see it from the other side. But anyways, Hartmann, he had this special tactic in combat. Rather than a tactic, I think it would be better to say it's a kind of concept. So whenever he shoots down an enemy plane, he never watches it go down. For rookies, that's the ultimate mistake to make because it's really hard to resist seeing this huge ball of fire falling through the sky, crashing onto the ground or in the sea. It's just hard to resist. But those are the moments when the pilots are left most vulnerable. When you just made a hit and you're watching them go down, you're the most vulnerable. Because when you're fully immersed in this eye-opening experience, you're left fully open to enemy attack. You become the next target, and you can be easily ambushed or hit from behind. So whenever Hartmann makes a hit, he immediately turns away or locks onto the next target or either hides himself. He never looks at what he just shot down. And that's what I also think about justice. When God brings justice upon the evildoers, you know what? Don't participate. Don't gloat. Don't jeer on the sidelines. Move on with what you're supposed to do. Keep advancing towards your own targets. There's another example in the Bible which illustrates this perfectly. Just think about the case of Lot and his family. What happened to Lot's wife? When God punished the cities Sodom and Gomorrah, God told Lot and his family, hey, when all of this starts, run, do not look back. Run, don't look back. So when Sodom and Gomorrah caught on fire, their entire family fled the cities. But Lot's wife didn't listen. She didn't obey God. She turned back and looked, and she died in the catastrophe. So leave revenge to God. Don't look back. Always entrust yourself to the Lord. Let God have the final call. And that is why I don't seek my own revenge. And I hope that was insightful to you as well. So that's your podcast for today. Thank you very much for listening. God bless you and God loves you. And I will see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.